We may have.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Lewis Wave. Hi, we are kicking off this year's Portland Traffic and Transportation class. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to first welcome everybody to the course. And we have sharing our class with you today. I'm going to go through a quick introduction of who we are. I'm Tweet2 with Tweet2 Consulting. This is today's class, week 1, and we will be talking about transportation equity and community in our city. We are joined with by two directors from PBOT, Chris Warner, and also Erin Golub, our PSU director of the Urban Studies and Planning, and they will be here to lead us into an introduction for the course. But prior to handing this over to our directors for a formal introduction, I also want to introduce to you Michael Espinoza, who has been instrumental in leading this course on the PBOT side with registration. So many of you have received an email from Michael to introduce you to the class. And also joining us is Ananda Gordon Peabody with PSU as our graduate assistant, who will be helping me through this course with a handful of things, not just technology and the Google Drive, but really leading us through some of the class projects and the homework assignments in the course itself. So I want to welcome everybody. We'll get an opportunity to hear from our directors. So I want to do a run through of the course on how we're going to spend today, after which we will hear a little bit from each of you on introductions from you. So I want you to kind of spend some time to think about what you'd like to share with the class. Many of it is really a lot. Many of it is what we had talked about in our when you had registered for the course. So I want you to be ready as you do your introductions to give your name, how you would like to be identified as, where do you live, within which district in Portland, and why you're interested in taking this class. I'd like to hear from you. And what would you like to learn from this course? And also kind of a snippet of what's most interesting about you. So I'll have a run through of those questions again. I can also put that in the chat, but I really want to give this opportunity for us to share our stories and build community with each other as we learn more about transportation. After your introductions, we'll have a break, and then I will bring back Ada Narasha, which is our class alum from last year, who's going to talk about her projects. And I will then go through the class syllabus, which I've sent over this morning. And then we'll talk about the class project and the scavenger bingo game. So that's essentially how we're going to spend tonight's class. Feel free to use the chat function. Feel free to use the hand raise function throughout the course. There's a little bit of a housekeeping for Zoom, and I can go over that later. But this class, as you know, is being recorded, it's live stream and recorded, and everyone can also view anywhere around this who has internet access. So we'll go through some of those in my other presentation, but I'd like to now have an opportunity to give our PBOT director a chance to introduce us and welcome us to the class.
Thank you, Professor. I appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. I think Amanda has a PowerPoint that she will load for me. I'm going to give you kind of a brief overview of PBOT and the work that we do there and some of our priorities moving forward. Let me get that loaded in just a sec.
Hey, Nanda, would you be able to load up Chris's presentation?
Yep, give me 1 second.
Thank you.
All right.
Also, during this time, I'd encourage you to have your video on. It would be great to see your faces. This is how I connect with the students, especially as we're in the Zoom space.
All right.
Mm. We are always taking care of technical things. Usually during this time, we are our own IT. Ananda, are you able to bring up the presentation or do you need some help?
Are you not able to see it? Because it shows up on my screen as
Yeah.
being shared.
It says you've started sharing, but it's just still black.
Okay, let me see if I can get it to work.
All right, one more time.
One more time. Are you able to see it now?
No.
Are you sharing the right tab? There might be multiple tabs.
Yeah.
That could be. Or the right window, however you want to think about that.
Why don't I give it a go here from my end?
Oh. All right.
Coming through?
Yeah, I think there you
Okay.
go. Super. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I have been participating in this class for many years, both I think as a presenter and also as a judge. I've done that for a number of years, but this really is one of the most rewarding and enriching experiences here in Portland. It's very community driven and really talks about our transportation ecosystem. And I'm pleased to have so many engaged and well-informed community advocates. And that's one of the reasons I think that Portland has been so forward-thinking in transportation initiatives. By advocating for community needs, you have a direct role in helping PBOT move in the right direction. And that's why everyone at PBOT really values this opportunity to partner with PSU and offer this course. As I said, I'm going to give you a quick overview of PBOT and a few of the things that we're working on in terms of our strategic goals. So, Michael, could you go to the next slide? Awesome. So a little background for me. I've been working in politics and transportation for many years. I worked back in Congress for Congressman DeFazio. I worked in the state level. I worked with the Department of Transportation, and I was Governor Kulongoski's transportation advisor for 8 years. I also worked for Senator Wyden, and then I've been at the city for many years, and I became the director about 3 years ago. So one of the things that I've discovered that this period of time during the pandemic really has been one of the most challenging that I've experienced professionally. This pandemic has transformed our operations at PBOT from top to bottom. The pandemic's economic fallout has really put tremendous pressure on the Bureau as well. And the other piece that I think is just as important is the ongoing racial justice movement has spurred us really to recommit PBOT to being a Bureau dedicated to transportation justice and building a transportation system that works for all Portlanders. I'm proud of the way that the Bureau has risen to these challenges, and I'm confident that we'll emerge from this time as stronger, more flexible, and more innovative. and in a better position to fulfill our mission of connecting Portlanders to places that they want to go safely, reliably, and sustainably. Next slide. Commissioner Joanne Hardesty is our commissioner in charge. We're very excited to have such a dynamic leader with deep community roots at the helm of the Bureau. She has articulated a transportation vision that has equity, sustainability, safety, and innovation at its center. She's also made it very clear that she wants us to be a leader when it comes to using our projects to advance economic opportunity for minority businesses and contractors that have historically been left on the sidelines. This slide shows our executive leadership team, our group directors, and the leaders of our key Bureau-wide programs: communications, public involvement, equity and inclusion, asset management, strategy and innovation, and intergovernmental affairs. There have been some changes over the last couple of months that's reflected here, but others that have worked with the Bureau might not know of them. But Tara Waziak, who was recently the head of our maintenance operations group, is now the deputy director at PBOT. And we've also created a new business group. It's called Traffic Operations and Services. Wendy Cawley, the city traffic engineer, is the leader of that group. Through this change, we are consolidating PBOT's traffic design and operation functions into a single group to further streamline how we design, operate, and keep the right-of-way moving, both safely and effectively. And then Dave Benson, who was our parking and regulatory services division manager for the last 5 years, has been serving as our interim maintenance operations director while we recruit the permanent leader for maintenance operations. Next slide. Over 900 employees work at PBOT, and they're divided into 6 main business groups. And we all work together to manage what is a pretty daunting portfolio of assets. Next slide. Our 6 business groups offer programs and services that range from technical support focused on specific stakeholder groups, for example, our construction services team. And then we also do broad community-based initiatives that are designed to help Portlanders enjoy the city. Our block party program, for example, is a great example of this. Not only does our portfolio show a diverse diversity in terms of who we serve, but there's also a wide variety of services that we provide and that we offer on this slide. Just a few of the things that you can see, ranging from basic emergency response and infrastructure maintenance to consumer protection and long-range planning. So all of those things are incorporated in what we do. Next slide. So this is my favorite slide, I think, that we have at PBOT. It really illustrates the impact that we have on fellow Portlanders. We manage literally billions of dollars worth of assets. But once Portlanders leave our home, they really can't help but rely on the things that we manage and maintain in order for them to go about their lives here in Portland. And ensuring that these assets are safe and well maintained is a very complex task that we have. Next slide. One of the things that I've been reminded the last few days that we have basically what we call the 4 seasons of PBOT. So you can see during the different times of year, most of our maintenance crews are very focused on some of these tasks. Maintenance makes up about 500 members of our crews. So we're coming into the winter season. Well, we're doing fall first, I should say. So we're continuing to do sewer pipe cleaning. Leaf season's coming up. We're still doing street cleaning. We do ADA ramps all year long. And then we also do some pavement markings and things like that. And one of the big transitions we have coming into the winter is snow and ice response. So we're responsible for plowing and maintaining all the roads. We do a lot of flood control. So if there's ever floods, we're out there doing that. We have retaining walls. So we really are going into the winter season, which is extraordinarily one of our busiest times. Next slide. 2 years ago, we launched our strategic plan, Moving to Our Future. Before the pandemic, the transportation sector was going through an unprecedented period of innovation and change. The pandemic has slowed that change to a large extent, but I expect as we continue to emerge from this current health emergency, we will see more innovation and transformation. We designed Moving to Our Future to take advantage of the many transformations in our sector. We want to harness these new tools and technologies to make Portland safer and more accessible, to ease traffic congestion and build a more sustainable city with vibrant neighborhoods and a prosperous economy. Next slide. When we talk to Portlanders about the top issues related to getting around Portland, 3 answers consistently led the pack: safety, congestion, and road maintenance. In a recent survey that we did, 9 out of 10 Portlanders cited these 3 issues as their top priorities. So we have shaped Moving to Our Future around these concerns, building the plan around 3 core values. One is safety, making Portland streets safe for everyone. Moving people and goods, provide transportation options for a growing city. And asset management, deliver smart investments to maintain our transportation system. Delivering on these goals means saving lives by protecting Portlanders as they walk, bike, roll, and drive. It means saving time by offering easy, reliable options to where they go and how they get around. It also means saving money by investing in our roads efficiently and taking care of our assets. Next slide. Besides concentrating on these 3 goals, another significant innovation in Moving to Our Future is the way we've elevated our work on equity. We are framing this work as transportation justice, and it's a reflection of both what we've heard from the community and also the City of Portland's overall commitment to achieving a just distribution of resources, access, and opportunity. And we start that by really dealing with the issues of race and disability. We know that these are significant I know that there are significant disparities for people of color and people with disabilities that they face when they're using our transportation system. Knowing this, transportation justice requires taking proactive steps here and now to ensure that all Portlanders enjoy the same access to safe, reliable, and affordable transportation options. Our roads belong to everyone, and it is in the public interest that we work to create community and decide together how best to make the use of our shared right of way. And it's our responsibility to remove any barriers to equitable and accessible mobility wherever those barriers exist. And in pursuing a more just transportation system, we have 2 aims: build a system, as I said, that's accessible to all Portlanders, and help Portland significantly shrink its carbon footprint. Next slide. As part of this commitment, we'll be asking 2 fundamental questions about our work. Will it advance equity and address structural racism? And next slide. And will it reduce carbon emissions? The civil rights protests that took place this summer have given us new urgency on our commitment to transportation justice. And next slide. I'll conclude with a few words of why what you're doing is so important. Now more than ever, we need to have robust community input because we are facing some very significant challenges. We have the ongoing pandemic, and the challenges of our transportation system is to figure out the best way to use it to make sure that all Portlanders can have safe, reliable transportation. And as we emerge from the Delta surge, we also have the challenge of repairing the damages and stresses from the last 18 months. We also need to figure out what lessons we should learn from the pandemic. For example, could the widespread use of teleworking as a way to address congestion and make gains to shrinking our carbon footprint? Those are some of the questions that we're asking ourselves. We also have to build on and expand the energy of the movement on racial justice. At PBOT, we are really reckoning with how transportation has in the past contributed to inequities in Portland, and we must do what we can to ensure that we don't make the same mistakes and instead build a transportation system that follows the principles of transportation justice. My hope is that with your participation in this class, this is only really your first chapter in a much longer story for advocating for safer, more sustainable, and more inclusive transportation system in Portland. I would encourage you to take the insights you gain here and participate in your neighborhood level organizations if you haven't already. I also want to encourage you to think about joining a PBOT committee. We have many opportunities in this respect, including our main Bureau and Budget Advisory Committee. Please visit our website and we can send you the link, and you can join our mailing list as well. This is a great way to stay informed about what our committees are doing and other opportunities you have to get involved in your city. So last slide is just to thank you for inviting me tonight. And I don't know if time exists to answer any questions. I'll leave that to to TUI to figure out what we need to do. But thank you for your attention, and I look forward to hearing about all the projects that you'll be working on in the next year or so. I guess the next term, not a year. It's not. It's only a term. So.
It could, well, this is like a whole program, so we can extend it to a year. Thank you, Director. Since we do have you for a moment, I want to give you students the floor to just ask a question or two, since we do have Director Warner in the room, in our virtual space. Kathy? I see Kathy's hand raised. Would you like to ask a question? If you unmute yourself, you.
I didn't raise my hand, but as long as you're calling.
Oh. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Director Warner. Talk to us about how post-pandemic the use of cars has gone down, or has the potential of going down a lot, and how PBOT is addressing that in its parking plans and its plans for moving forward with a much lower carbon footprint city.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's interesting. The pandemic has been kind of on an arc, right? Early on, we saw just the VMT, the vehicle miles traveled, really drop. But what we've seen in the last few months, it's actually up to almost pre-pandemic levels in terms of vehicle miles traveled. What we have seen is, particularly in the central core, a lot less people parking downtown because of kind of the, I think, people aren't working downtown. So for us, it's kind of a double-edged sword. One of our main sources of revenue is parking revenue. So in some instances, we've lost part of our parking revenue, like 80% of our revenue. So that has been a huge challenge for us. PBOT gets very little city general fund. So most of our money comes from gasoline taxes and parking revenue. So we are trying to work through what a more sustainable model would be. We've been really on the front lines in terms of the recovery, and with our healthy businesses, we've been really reimagining the right of way in terms of creating space for businesses so people can be socially distanced. So that's work we're really proud of. But what we're trying to do is figure out where that goes next in terms of, is that something in the future? Because our commissioner and PBOT really believes that using the right of way just for car storage probably isn't the best use. But what can we do to involve the community to make sure that we have kind of the right balance? We as an agency, we're not that good at managing space and putting on events. So we need to really work with the community and others in order to figure out how best to really reimagine the right of way. So that's something we're very interested in. But also we need to figure out how we pay for the basic services, such as maintenance and all the other work that we do with kind of the changing landscape of our transportation funding model. Hope that helped.
Great, thank you, Director. I'm going to take one more question because I also want to have some time for our Professor Golub to speak as well. Hami, I see your hand is up. Would you like to would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Thank you very much. Hi, Director. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about the bicycle plan for 2030 and how we can get to the mode share that is set out by PBOT to get to 25% bicycle mode share, I think by 2030 or 2035.
Yeah, this is a great question. I think a lot of it will be to continue the infrastructure investments that we've made. Our neighborhood greenway system, I think, is great, but we need to make it safer. We need to expand it, particularly out in East Portland. We've got also in the Central City, the Central City in Motion plan, where we've working on getting safer facilities throughout, but it's a challenge that we have plateaued a little bit. And so I wish I had the answer in terms of getting to the the mode split goal that we have. But it's still a challenge we have, but we'll continue to work with advocates and others to try and get that. But I don't have an answer right now in terms of how we get that. Roger, talk to Roger about it all the time. I know that we just need to continue to make those kind of infrastructure investments, and hopefully if we do make those investments, we can have more people take advantage of it. I noticed over the last few years, as somebody that cycles every day downtown, that those investments can pay off. It's just a matter of then getting the word out that it's a safe, reliable form of transportation. The other piece that I just want to mention is that safety has also been kind of the forefront in our mind. But we've had a terrible couple of years on the road in terms of the way, and it's mostly the way people are driving. I think speeds are up. People are driving carelessly and recklessly, and so we've got to really get our arms around that, because I think some people just don't feel safe. And the other piece that I think for us as a bureau, we really want to recognize, and we have, is that not all people feel safe in the right of way. I know there are, what we've heard in the outreach we've done, are people of color don't necessarily feel safe sometimes in our sidewalks or in our bike lanes. So we really need to continue to do what we can to not only make sure that it's safe, but also that we are communicating to Portlanders that it's not okay, and it's kind of a bigger frame than just a transportation question. Is what we're doing to recognize as a society that there are some bad actors out there, and what we can do to try to minimize that, to make sure that everyone has the same right and has the same feeling of safety as they traverse our right of way. Thanks, honey.
Thank you. Great questions. I really appreciate you being here, Dr. Warner. Appreciate the time that you've spent with us this evening, and the presentation. We'd love to welcome you back towards the end of class for review as your schedule allows. This is one of my favorite projects that I work on within the city, and love being able to bring everyone together. And
the one thing the one thing I will say, and I think as the coursework goes, I'm sure a bunch of other P-botters will be part of the curriculum. And so we look forward to engaging with you. And again, thank you for your advocacy, and thank you for your taking the time to learn. A lot of us, are in the transportation world full time. It's gratifying to see others that really want to step up, because it is, the reason I'm involved in transportation, because it's so important, not only to the vitality of the city, but also for our economy and how we actually interact with each other. So I'm excited that you're here, and thank you for your advocacy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Director. And I see in the chat, Michael has been responding and also giving you links where you could be involved and sign up for our newsletters. And so feel free to go through those links. They're really great resources for you. Now I want to hand it over to Professor Golub at PSU to do an introduction and just to welcome us to this amazing collaboration between PBOT and PSU, because this class has been instrumental in so many ways, but this collaboration is really important to make this happen. So Aaron, I'll give you the floor.
Thanks, and thanks for having me. And I don't have a longer presentation. I just want to, on behalf of PSU and the School of Urban Studies and Planning, welcome you to the class. We normally physically host you here on campus, but now we're virtually hosting the class. And Ananda is one of our students. And so welcome. It's always pretty exciting for me. I'm 25 years in the field, but I have not seen a model like this where, average neighbors and residents are coming to kind of develop an idea of their own and try and see that into the real world. I've been in other models where we train residents to become commissioners or other things, but this is a very accessible model where every year we have another cohort go through. And as you know, some projects, and I'm sure you've heard about it, probably sparked your interest, have become real projects in the real world. So that's pretty cool. But I mean, when you think about some of the major questions around our transportation system, a lot of them have been answered by citizens, the average residents. So if you look at the cancellation of the Mount Hood Freeway, if you look at the removal of Harbor Drive and the installation of the park, the West Side Esplanade and the Tom McCall Park, those were largely led by residents, average residents, of course, with professional planners, staff, and elected officials getting involved as well. But the model of kind of resident-led expertise and activism is super important in Portland. And so I'd like to just welcome you. Very briefly, if you're interested in becoming a professional planner, we do have a master's degree in urban and regional planning. It's one of the top programs in the country. We also have master's in urban studies and a PhD in urban studies, which are more academic degree. We have an undergraduate degree in community development. We also partake in a master's in real estate development with the business school. We also offer a bunch of mini masters, which are what we call certificate programs. So we have one in transportation, it's just 5 courses. We have one in demography, in urban design, in real estate. So if you're interested in coming back to school and kind of getting in class and reading and updating yourself, then we would welcome you back to campus. And I know a few of you. I want to say hi to Sarah and Tim. And I probably know others. I'm not seeing the whole list, but Sarah and I were at Arizona State together many years ago. And Tim is a veritable official in his own right. So
good to see you, Aaron.
Yeah. So what I love about this class is now I go away and then in 10 weeks I come back and it's like opening a box of chocolates. I get to see all of the projects that you've worked on through the term. And if at any time during the term you want to just reach out to me to bounce ideas, I've definitely met with students over the years who are struggling with a question or trying to decide between 2 projects or whatever. Just email me. I'm easy to find. I can put my email in the chat, but I'm also easy to find online. So have fun with the class, enjoy, and I'll see you in December.
Thank you, Professor Golub. Very much appreciated. I also want to mention one of my big success from this course. This is my 3rd year teaching it. It's 31 year running. But within the last 2 years of teaching this, we've had at least 60 or more graduates from this course, but 4 individuals from this course decided to pursue degrees in Masters in Urban Planning at PSU and around within the Pacific Northwest. And later on, you'll hear more from last year's alum. So I want to move on to our next piece on the agenda. Besides saying hello to everybody, I want to also say hello to Tim. He's famous in transportation. You'll get a chance to see him. Hi. But as we're here, I'd like to do our introductions of everyone and really learn more about you. I have posted into the chat the introduction. So what I'll do is, as I see you on the screen on my screen, I'll call out your name and I'll have you to introduce yourself. I'd like to learn more about you and why you're here. So Hammy, you're the first person on my on this screen. So I'll let you speak.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. So my name's Hami. Hami Rahmani. Thanks for having me in this class. I go by he, him, but they is fine too. So I live just off of Hawthorne at 31st in Southeast. What are you interested in? Why am I interested in taking this class? Well, my wife and I moved to Portland 11 months ago, almost to the date, 11 months ago, from San Diego. I'm kind of from all over the place, but we moved here specifically because of infrastructure. We basically ride our bikes for our main transportation mode. And so we wanted to be somewhere where we could do that efficiently and safely. And so we decided on Portland. And so why am I taking this class? Well, I want to learn more. I've already learned a lot from a lot of folks that I see on this screen, but also other folks that I don't see here. And so, knowing about the history and things, I think is super important. So I'm very excited about that. What would I want to learn? Well, I kind of answered that, the history, but also I know that there's a project, of course, that that we participate in, and I think I'm very excited to be able to kind of get the creative juices flowing and try to understand what it is that is really important to me and the people around me, and how we can make this city a better place to roll, walk, and bike. So I'm excited about that part. What is the most interesting thing about me? That's a difficult one. Well, I'm an immigrant. It's not that interesting, but it is what it is. I moved from Iran when I was 10, and I've lived kind of all over the place in this country, on the East Coast and the West Coast. So I think I have a perspective that that is varied from my being an immigrant, but also just living in different parts of the country. I'm also a physician. So I have a public health perspective, and that I think is an imperative here with regard to transportation. So I thank you again for having me.
Great, thank you.
Can I
Thank you,
ask a
Henry.
question?
Sure, I don't know who asked, but
This is Ian. Did you let
Okay.
the cat walk behind you specifically to garner goodwill?
My cat is very social and
No.
likes to be involved in everything that is going on. So
Yeah, always having a cat walk behind you, it's a surefire way to like,
thanks for noticing.
Maria, you're next. Your audio is really low. How about we do this? Are you okay with, can you turn it on somehow? No, I can't hear you. You know what we'll do, because I want to be pressed for time here. Why don't we, is there any way, how about you enter in your intros in the chat, if that's okay, then we can figure out that, and I'll move to the next person. I'm so sorry, we're already at 7:20. Sam, you're next.
My name is Sam Churchill. I live on Hayden Island, he, him. I'm so impressed by what PDOT has done over the last 50 years. It's always been ahead of everybody else, it seems like, or, ahead of the curve for sure. And I think it's continuing to be that way, which is really nice because of all the innovation that's going on in transportation. My gosh. It's since I live on Hayden Island, of course, I'm concerned about the bridge on I-5, and I get frustrated with ODOT, WestDOT. They don't seem to be very responsive, and that's one of the things I love about PDOT and Portland is it is responsive, and so I just want to learn. That's why I'm here, and learn about the system, all the interactions and stuff like that. So thank you for inviting me. I really am going to enjoy this, I think.
Great, thank you, Sam. Corin, you're next.
Hi, I'm Corin. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you. I go by she, her pronouns. I live in Roseway on 66th, and I am interested in taking this class because I'm a member of the PBOT Bicycle Advisory Committee, and I want to learn more about how projects work so I can function better in that capacity. Yeah, I'm not very interesting. I'm the mother of 2 kids. My pandemic project, I learned how to make French macarons and make a couple hundred a week to sell and give to people. So.
Wow, thank you so much. Well, you know, if we are able to do this field trip that I plan, I think your macaroons may come in quite handy. Yes. Sean, you're next. Sean Martinez.
Hi, I'm Sean Martinez, he, him. We live far southwest. We're like on the county line, all the way between Tigard and Portland. I'm interested in safe walkable infrastructure. Something I'd like to learn is how decisions are made by PBOT for funding, maybe some modal shifts for micro mobility and transit to get away from single occupancy vehicles. Something interesting about me is I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'm a volunteer with Bike Loud and PBOT. I've distributed a lot of yard signs by bicycle, and I've challenged myself to ride my bike every day this year. We purchased an e-bike about 18 months ago and put over 6,000 miles on it already. So, and that's it.
Thank you, Sean. Angelica, you're next.
Hello, my name is Angelica. I use she and they, them pronouns. I live downtown around the PSU area, and I'm interested in taking this class because I actually moved from Jacksonville, Florida in January, and I grew up in Florida for the most part, and it is not, in my opinion, it's not a very transportation friendly place. And I've moved to other places like Portland where it is very transportation friendly. And so I'm just interested in like learning about like more sustainable ways of getting around the city. I will use a vehicle, but I also try to use TriMet and other transportation options when possible. So I want to learn more in this class, like what other ways are possible and how to get involved making cities more sustainable as far as transportation. And what is the most interesting thing about me? I'm not sure. I'm not a parent. I don't have any kids. So I'm not really like a lot of other folks in this class. I would say the most interesting thing about me is probably that I'm from Florida. So I have like Florida man.
Thank you, Angelica. Hendrik, you're up.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Hendrik Brokelshin. Definitely only call me Hendrik. I'd like to be identified as he, him. I live in North Portland in the Arbor Lodge neighborhood, and I'm interested in taking this class because I think it'll benefit my work. Specifically, I'm a Safe Routes to School coordinator for the city of Tigard, and I work with 17 schools, and I've been doing that since January of this year. So I'm really hoping to learn new tools to be more effective in my job. Specifically, I'd like to learn how to reach all populations and all groups of people with 17 different schools and different cultural backgrounds within each school. It's really hard to communicate, especially when there's 5 different languages in the school district. So I would love to learn the best way to reach everyone in ways that are effective so that we can do behavior change from single car family rides to walking, biking, and rolling. The most interesting thing about me is I was a bike tour guide for 7 years. So I worked in places like Czech Republic, Glacier, Montana, Germany, and various other places. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Hendrik. Next up is Erin.
Hi, yeah, I'm Erin. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Northeast Portland, kind of near Mount Tabor. I'm interested in this class because like other people, I don't have a car. I get around exclusively by bus or train or walking or biking. And I'm really interested in how to build better environments to prioritize pedestrians and cyclists over cars. And I'm also just interested in how cities are designed and why they are the way that they are. I'm hoping to learn especially like how traffic and transit systems are set up in a city, like what goes into planning huge projects like the Rose Lane or slow streets or stuff like that. And like what makes a project like feasible or infeasible from a planning perspective. The most interesting thing about me is, an interesting thing about me is I really like Iceland is my favorite country. So I've been to Iceland 6 times. So if you're planning a trip to Iceland in the future, I'm your girl.
Great, thank you. We might all have to go to Iceland with you. Then we can learn about some transportation systems over there. Debbie, you're next.
Hi, my name is Debbie Koja. I like to be identified as he, she. I currently live in the North Portland Cathedral Park neighborhood. I moved there in 2016 from Beaverton, and I lived in Beaverton since 1990. And I'm probably talking too much, but and I worked for the city of Portland for 25 years. So I took TriMet buses. I took the express bus from Beaverton all the way into downtown for many years. I've taken the MAX. And the reason I'm interested in this class is because I am retired. I retired in 2017. And I want to use my time to give back to the community and just, use what skills I have. And I'm getting older, I'm 62. So I like to provide feedback on how elderly people get around. And, I don't feel as safe on TriMet now as I used to. I guess maybe I'm not as brave. So I would like to, be able to engage in the community and give feedback as I can from my perspective. And the most interesting thing about me, my husband and I have a 44-foot sailboat that we bought in 2017. And we're both like, he just turned 71 and we're like, what are we doing with this thing? But we did take it up, we were up in Seattle and we took it all the way to Victoria, although our engine died in the middle of the Straits of Juan de Fuca and we had to get towed into Victoria. I guess that's one of my most interesting stories. And that was like, and we're actually going to go back next year. We're going to take our boat up there. So nice to meet everyone.
Thank you, Deborah or Debbie. Thank you.
Thanks.
Joan, you're next.
Hello, my name is Joan Pettit. I use she, her pronouns. And let's see, now I have to look at the list of questions again. So I live in inner Northeast Portland in the Elliott neighborhood. And I've just heard so many folks talking about this class. Some of the sort of best local activists and advocates speak very highly of it and are always nudging people to take it. And so I've been a bike commuter for years. Well, not right now, but I generally am bike commuting actually to PSU. I work at PSU, but and I'm really interested in getting a more comprehensive understanding of our transportation systems. And I am particularly interested in how to balance the needs of underrepresented communities with the often very loud voices of folks who maybe have other wants and needs. And something somewhat interesting about me, I think, in the context of this class is that I'm also a co-host of a podcast called the Sprocket Podcast, and there are at least 3 guests we've had on in the past year in this class, and I suspect that other folks here have been on it too, but we record each week and kind of focus on bikes, active transportation, and things like that. So that's been a great way to learn more. And so excited to be here and to kind of bring some of what I learned back to that. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Joan. I feel like we're building such community here, so I'm thankful for everyone's patience and really grateful for each of you to share your stories. And next up is Keith Wilson.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Keith Wilson, he, him, his. I live in Northeast Portland, just by 32nd in Alberta. I was born and raised in North Portland, so pretty close to home, if you will. Really interested in that class because of history. Kind of to move forward, I think you really have to understand where you came from. And some of the projects that were mentioned earlier was the Mount Hood Freeway. Really love to know that. The why did we try it? And then why was the activism and how did that become not a plan we move forward with? There's always a huge amount of information to learn from that. And then certainly very similar, the Rose Quarter project right now is a great, I think, topic we can talk about how that really came to being over this past 50 years and what we're trying to do to really remedy that. As far as learning from the class, placemaking that isn't built around cars. I have a trucking company, and so you would think I would be all for roads. I'm actually kind of completely the opposite of that. You know, we have a more efficient system when we rely less on roadways and runways and build more rail or infrastructure that really brings us all together. I'd really like to understand what our goals are for Portland. And then the interesting part really ties in with the question that I just answered. I am a board member for the U.S. High-Speed Rail Association and have been working with Congress, in particular Chairman DeFazio, and this week is that really important week because we've been trying to fund high-speed rail to get the segment from Eugene to Vancouver, British Columbia, and then we can remake Portland into this really extraordinary mobile hub that doesn't really rely on just roads, and then we can really move people and technology and capital at 250 miles per hour, to Eugene or to Seattle. So I think that's an extraordinary thing that's going on right now. So keep your fingers crossed on that.
Thank you, Keith. Next up is Jimmy.
Hi, my name's James Wellens, but I usually go by Jimmy and he, him pronouns. I live in North Portland, pretty close to Farragut Park. I've been interested in transportation and how cities are designed for a long time. So this is maybe the first time I've taken any active step in learning more. So that's what I hope to get out of this class. And maybe not the most interesting, but an interesting thing is I spent about 10 years living overseas. And then when I moved back to the US, the reason I picked Portland was because it was one of the few cities where I could get by on transit and bike.
Awesome, thank you, Jim. My plan is to finish the introductions, so we have a few more, and then we'll break for about 5 minutes after all the introductions, and then we'll come back and Ada will present. So I just want to give you kind of a timing. So hold on tight. So we'll go through these introductions. I want everybody have a chance to know each other. Kathy, you're next.
Hi, thanks, Tweet. I'm Kathy Tuttle, she, her. I live in the Pearl District. I just moved here in June and from Seattle. I lived in Seattle for about 30 years. And I'm interested in taking this class because I really believe that good street work is collaborative work, and I want to get a perspective from a lot of other people in this class. I have really big visions for what streets can be. I don't think they just need to be car and parking and car movement. And I believe that they're the most valuable thing that we have in a city that can really change the complexion of a city. So what I want to learn from this class is people's perspectives. I mean, you know, you're all coming from all over the world and all different places, and I really want to learn from that. I guess the most interesting thing about me is that I have a PhD in urban design and planning, and I've worked as a transportation and land use planner. I started a nonprofit in Seattle called Seattle Neighborhood Greenways 10 years ago that's been responsible for about $10 million or $100 million in street improvements. And I also worked in Seattle for a number of years, actually on 40 different park developments. So I mean, I understand sort of how cities work, but I really feel that the move to actually transform cities into places for people really needs to come about with a collaborative movement of people together, and it needs to represent a lot of different perspectives. And I'm hoping that's what I get from this class. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I hope we don't disappoint you. Karen, you're up next.
Hi, my name's Karen Martin and I use she, her pronouns. I live in East Portland in the Gateway neighborhood. I'm interested in this class because like last year I started working for PBOT, my first time in a public service job my whole career. And it's really been gratifying to feel so connected to my community that in some small way, the work that I'm doing improves the place that I live. And I am just as a result of that, I'm thirsty for knowledge and I really want to understand transportation systems from all different angles so that I can better support my community. There's nothing interesting about me, but I did just buy my first e-bike and I'm super stoked about that.
Thank you, Karen. Sarah, you're up next.
Hi all, my name is Sarah Schenk and I go by she, her. It is so good to meet all of you and I'm just really stoked to be part of this class. As Professor Golub mentioned, I come from Arizona State and studied with him for a bit. That's where I got my introduction to micromobility and sustainability. I'm interested in this class just because after being in Portland for about 6-7 years now, I've gotten around, or I'm in North Portland, by the way, so like Mississippi area. And just the experience of, there have been a couple of years where I've used Biketown as my main mode of transportation back before the e-bikes, so quite a different experience then. So between biking and using car sharing and just trying to explore different ways to get around the city, honestly, you start developing frustrations and want to come up with solutions. So I'm really interested in getting different perspectives and better understanding the process of how you actually go from identifying these issues that you're encountering every day to how do we envision a better future and then implement it. Interesting about me, a fun fact, I broke my arm this summer, or my wrist, riding an e-bike and had a cast on for 3 months, but I still totally am a proponent and love e-bikes and am back on one again. So I totally suggest trying the e-bikes, the Nike e-bikes, regardless. Anyway, thank you.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Laura, you're next.
Hi, I'm Laura Venegas and is she, her pronouns. I live in the Southeast area in the Buckman district, or neighborhood, I should say. Why am I interested in taking this class? This year, during the pandemic, I did an internship with PBOT in active transportation. So I got a little taste of how fun and interesting it is to design the greenways and just be part of Sunday Parkways and all of that. So it's something that I really want to get to know and learn more. So that's what I plan on really learning in this class, hopefully more about traffic, transportation, how it gets designed, and planning for the communities, all that kind of stuff. And what's interesting about me? Well, I'm also a mother of 2. So I didn't get to bake any cookies, but I did take a baking class and I got to bake pies, which I've never done before. So that was really interesting. So thank you for having me.
Great, thank you, Laura. McKellen, you're up next.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Mikal Johannes, she, her pronouns. And I actually live in the Southwest neighborhood nowadays. I grew up in Northeast Portland, which is a very great place for transportation, for active transportation, especially. I grew up right by the 72 and the 75 bus lines, which are, some of the most active ones in Portland. And so, and like a lot of people in our city, we got priced out of the really great active transportation parts of town to parts of town where that's not readily available. And so since I've lived in Southwest Portland, I've actually learned how to drive because I've had to. And so I'm really interested in how do we make not only Southwest Portland, but just all the parts where people of color have been displaced, better transportation hubs for them. I know in East Portland, there's a need for a lot more like north-south lines, and how do we become educated enough to help with that, with advocacy efforts, and learning about the planning processes for things like that, and just in general. So I think that's why I was interested in taking this class, is just building a better knowledge base. And I'd love to learn. I think I'm interested in learning the projects that have been done in the past, and just how to apply what we learn in class. And what the most interesting thing about me, I think, is I have 6 siblings and we live in 4 different countries. And so I've actually gotten to see what transportation looks like, where everyone's at, from Uganda to Germany to here, and then in Eritrea. So very different, I can tell you that much. Yeah, so I look forward to this class.
Awesome, thank you. Next up is Ada. I think I'm pronouncing your name right. Can you please correct me if I'm wrong?
Yeah. Oh, wait, there are multiple people.
There are 2. The student, is that how, can you pronounce your name, please?
Ada.
Ada. Okay, there are 2 spellings for Ada. This is the first time for me.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ada. I use she, her pronouns. I think I'm definitely the youngest person here. I'm 15. I'm a sophomore at Grant High School in Northeast Portland. I'm interested in taking this class because I've been really deeply involved with the youth climate movement in Portland, specifically advocating against freeway expansions. I am working with Sunrise PDX, leading a campaign called Youth versus ODOT, which is like a biweekly series of strikes outside the Oregon Department of Transportation headquarters, calling for an end to freeway expansions and an investment in sustainable transportation infrastructure. And so this class has been recommended to me by sort of some like mentors that I've had within climate activism, who are also involved in transportation work. And so I'm really interested in learning more about how we can build a transportation system that helps reduce our carbon emissions, and is more equitable and prioritizes racial justice, and learning more about the intersections of all of those things. The most interesting thing about me, probably just that I'm a 15-year-old and I'm here. This is not how most teenagers are spending their time. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. So thank you all.
Thank you
Can I ask
so
a
much.
question?
Go ahead.
There really is an organization called Youth Against ODOT. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Good to know. Good to know.
We will have a colleague of mine from ODOT who will be one of our speakers. So
time and place. Yeah.
Time and place. Yes, I will prep her for this class. I want to mention that, Ada, your registration came in. I was very, very impressed, and I thought about it, and this is the first class in which we're bringing somebody as young as you, but just so very honored to have you here. So the age range for this class is probably the widest I've ever taught, from 15 to 65. So you're in good hands. I want to say like each of us are your mentors here, as much as we're going to learn from you. But as you may know from this course, it's been a Earl Blumenauer legendary course for so long. And when I first taught this course, the very first year, Earl reached out to me and asked if I would teach this class to high school students. And actually want to launch something like this to the younger generation. So it never happened because the pandemic happened, and Earl's been kind of busy with a lot of different things. Our congressman has a lot going on. So for you to be present in this course, it's a representation of a generation that we have not had before. So welcome to you being here. Very much appreciate it. So we have a few more before we break. Ian, you're up next.
So my name is Ian Ryan. I use he, him, his. I live in Brentwood, Darlington, right where it butts up against Milwaukee. I'm taking this class. Because I work at Peabot, but a lot of what I do is internally focused, and I want to get a better idea of how Peabot works externally. I work with a lot of external folks at Peabot, but I still feel like I have a bunch of like different groups of knowledge that aren't connected, and I'm hoping to take this class to get a better idea of how Portland treats its transit and transportation systems as a whole. Most interesting thing about me is I think I have the best knowledge of Portland's pizza scene of anyone in this chat. So if you want to talk pizza, let me know.
Okay. Okay, so let's see who else. Michelle, sounds like you are on your iPad. Are you able to tune in? Yes. Oh, we can't hear you. No, that's okay. You know what we're going to do? Would you be able to do this into the chats, your introduction into the chats? And then we'll save some time and we'll figure out the audio. So next up is Zhao.
Hi everybody, I'm Châu, she, her. I live in Southeast area, and I'm an international student. And the reason I'm taking this class is because I want to go back to Vietnam and participate in planning, designing a bike city for one city in Vietnam. And I want to learn from, I love Portland because the bike country you have here. And when I was in Vietnam, I dreamed to be able to ride a bike to my workplace, but it is super hot and there's no shower place in my office. So I want to learn what's the most suitable way to have that kind of design for big city like Hanoi. And I want to learn about what is the education program relating to bike advocacy you have in Portland, and also what is the sustainable stream of budget, like funding for projects like that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Let's see here. I got a message from Trisha. Do you want to do an introduction or do you want to write in the chat?
Oh, I can do my introduction. I was just
Okay.
suggesting to that person who couldn't, we couldn't hear their audio.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and do your introduction. I'm going to text Michelle.
Okay, great. Well, hi, my name is Trisha Patterson. I use she or they. I am here, honestly, because Aaron Brown told me to take this class. I think that there are a few other people who are also here because Aaron Brown told them to take this class. I have also always been impressed with this class. I know that Chloe Daly took this class, a number of other folks, and so I've always had it kind of in the back of my mind of that it'd be really cool to take. What I'm hoping to get out of this, so I'm currently a grad student. I'm also on the board of Portland Neighbors Welcome, and I'm studying I'm doing an evaluative research into the housing needs analysis, and so I'm hoping to kind of just get a more rounded understanding of housing and transportation. That I'm very interested in housing, but transportation, it really goes hand in hand, especially with our carbon emissions and just how congested our roads are, and safety and public safety. So I hope that this class will open up my eyes to things that I didn't know before, and help me understand things in a new way.
Great, thank you, Tricia. Yes, Aaron is instrumental in transportation here in Portland, and as much as our friend Tim. So Tim is here. Tim, could you just, before we break, I want to give you a platform. He is such a person in transportation in Portland, and you have to know Tim. So Tim, you can go through your intros. You showed up to my class before. Everyone in the city knows you. I feel like my students should also get a little sound bite from you.
You are very, very sweet, Twee. I do recognize some folks like Tricia for Portland's Neighbors Welcome, and Hami, who's just taken over Portland in the last year just amazingly. I'm just blown away, and so good to see you, Sean, and others that I recognize. But anyway, I'm Tim, he, him, and kind of a longtime observer of the class, and I was so excited to hear that Twee was taking it over, and we met for a couple hours, to kind of help, just go over some planning and taking it in a new direction, a really exciting new direction for this class, and I just love what you've done with it these first couple of years, and there's more diversity than ever in this class. It's wonderful. And by the way, oh, thank you, Tricia. Oh, jeez. I live downtown. Yay for the rare folks who actually live downtown. I'm in the Harrison East, right by PSU. And I've been interested in cities in the Pacific Northwest since Earth's crust was cooling, basically. My email address is PDXFan. It's been PDXFan since the hour that Gmail, opened up their email system with a minimum of 6 characters. I'm like, 6 characters? I'm PDXFan. And I've been in Bike Loud since they started. Amazing, wonderful group. Hami is part of it as well as Sean. And Portland Neighbors Welcome, and basically everything that Aaron Brown is into. I'm totally down with that. And I'll give you my Twitter handle here, because those of you that know me on Facebook, it's kind of the opposite of Twitter. Facebook, as Twee knows, I just share beautiful pictures of the Pacific Northwest and travel. But Twitter, whew, it's tough love to the city all the time, every hour of every day. Right, Sean? But Peabot still follows me, so thank you so much, Peabot. I know the work you do, is so tough, and I send Nick Falbo and other friends at Peabot just positive energy every single day. I don't know how they do it. Oh my gosh, with the stuff they have to deal with every day. But I guess an interesting thing about me is that I'm a total numbers guy, and that's partly why I'm so interested in cities, their population, their density. I had every city in California, population minimum 25,000, census 1970, memorized as a, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, something like that. It was just, everything is a number. I call everyone at the entire US EPA by their phone number, because that's where I used to work. I'm starting to forget some of their numbers though, because it's been a while. But so I take that interest in numbers and cities and kind of translate that to some of the research and observations that I'm doing on Twitter, which is why I'm incredibly fascinated by Vancouver, BC. They're just shocking. It's just amazing. Anyway, I love this diverse group. I can't wait to see your projects and what you come up with. And thank you so much, Twee and Aaron, Professor Golub. That was incredibly nice of you. You guys made my entire night. Thank you so much.
You know, I have to say though, I did not pay him to come here. You know, Tim.
And I have a conflict until 7 every Thursday, but I'll try to come in whenever I can.
Thank you, Tim. You know, before we break for class, we actually have another fan that I've just realized from this course, and I'd like to introduce this person, and I've never met this person before. So Fiona, apparently you've been watching this course for the last 5 years. Can you introduce yourself? I'd love to learn about you and what you do at TriMet, and also what your interests are in this course.
Yeah, hi everybody. Fiona Lyon. I've been watching the course for the last 5 years or so. Just conveniently happens during dinner making time, but I always enjoy hearing all the speakers that come, and just excited to see some fresh faces in the transportation and planning world. I am a urban designer by training, and I'm a design manager in our transit-oriented development program at TriMet. So I'm here. I'll be a fly on the wall. I won't take up any time, but yeah, nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Fiona. We also have representation from TriMet during week 3. So we are, we spent a good amount of time together. So I want to give us a break, and about a 5-minute break. So just kind of refresh yourself, and then we'll come back and kind of finish up the course for today. So thank you, everyone. It's so nice to meet you. Yeah, take a breather break. So we'll come back at 8:03 or 8:05. Let's do 8:05. Thank you. I want to spend this time as we return back from break for our for Ada, our class alum from last year, to present. And after that, after Ada presents, then we'll go through the course syllabus and more information in the meat of the course. But the first chunk of this course really essentially is to share our stories. So after Ada is done, then I will share a little bit of my story as well. So, okay. Ananda, I think it says that, I think we're getting the same screen from last time. Ananda, let's try.
Okay.
I could probably share my screen too.
Yeah, let's do that. That's okay. Ada, would you be able to share your screen?
Yeah. I think you'd have to allow me to do so because it's disabled for participant screen sharing. Let's see.
It just made you a co-host. You should be able to do it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right. Are you able to see this?
Yes. Yes.
Are you still able to see it, or did it go away?
Yep, we're good. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Hold on a second. Sorry. All right. I think this is anyway. Well, let's just do this. I think it's fine. Don't want to take up too much time. So my name is Ade Nurasi. I took this class last year. My pronouns are she, her. My family and I immigrated to the US from Indonesia, and my day job, I'm a product designer at a GIS company. I'm currently pursuing an urban planning grad degree at PSU, focusing on transportation. I live in the Mount Tabor neighborhood. Most interesting part about me is probably my dog. He is an 11-year-old rescued bull terrier. So how I learned about this class is honestly through social media. I'm pretty obsessed with all things transportation. So I followed PBOT, TriMet, Metro, and all the transportation accounts. And I learned about this class through, I think, PBOT Instagram, and learn more about it from the city side. And I was really excited about the topic of transportations from the lens of equity, justice, and sustainability. The topic of my class project. So I went with the library and transportation because as my topics, because those are my two areas of interest. The library is where I feel safe and the place where I connect with the community. And I know that there are others who feel that way too. And yet I know at least in Multnomah County, not everyone has access or has easy access to the library. So I wanted to look into the intersection between the library as a community hub and public transportation. I also wanted to see if there's anything that the transportation can do to lower the barrier for people to get to the library. I was a bit intimidated by other students' project proposals because a lot of the students seem to at least came to the class knowing a specific issue in their neighborhood that they want to address, and they're very articulate about the problem and already have the solutions for it in mind. Whereas mine is more about a research into, looking for connection and opportunities. But I discussed it with Tui, and you're very encouraging and gave me ideas, and maybe we could, or maybe that I could use this opportunity as a comparative analysis research with other cities. Lastly, what I learned from the class and working on the project, I really enjoy learning from all the speakers that came from different transit agencies and transit-focused community development organizers, and how they were all centering justice, equity, and sustainability in their work. It was probably, one of the more hopeful points of last year. But yeah, and then combining my personal experience and interest with transportation and learning from this class really kind of pushed me to pursue a grad degree in urban planning. So I'll breeze through my project. Let's see, this is just a transportation and community connection with libraries. I talked a little bit about my background. There's plenty of transportation modes in Indonesia where I live, but there was little to no access to public libraries. And then when I moved to the US, it was, I had a lot of access to libraries. Just some data around how much time it took me to go from one place to another this is the first 2 points were back in California and then here, and the last 2 are in Oregon. Looking into library as a community center or a community hub, there's a diverse range of services and resources in multiple formats and languages at the library. There's, it's a homework center. There's one-on-one or group adult literacy programs. There's English learners and GED study programs. All of these services that are available at the library, including last year, they were, passing free lunches and free computers for K-12, and they set up outdoor computer lab and Wi-Fi access. And as you learn this year during the heat wave, the library were open as the cooling centers. So it has really transformed from just a place where you check out books to a community hub. But looking at where the Multnomah County libraries at the time were servicing, there's really not that much coverage in the east area of the county. I think that will change because big thanks to you all who signed the library bond and or measures last year. I think we will be building a large library in the Gresham area. And then also just kind of looking at who are the populations who are missing the library access in the East Multnomah County area. Then I look into just some GIS or like mapping data that highlights the percentage of like poverty in relations to where the libraries are. And then these are areas that highlights household with no internet access, and what that means is people rely on going to the libraries or to businesses to hook into broadband access. And these are where all the active library card holders are located in Multnomah County. And then this is the proposed library buildings if the measures pass. So I guess the problems that I highlighted is that the library services and resources are not servicing communities that need them the most. There's because of lack of library branches and spaces in certain neighborhoods, and also the limit to how far people are willing to travel to go to the library. I think if you think about a person with 2 young kids, even walking a mile with a bunch of books, that's a burden. And thinking about like from a perspective of someone who is physically disabled, that's also a burden to get to a library if they have to walk or travel far. And just this last Friday, we as part of the PSU orientation, we went to downtown Rockwood, and when I asked the community members there or community leaders where the library is located in relation to the downtown Rockwood, I think he mentioned that it's about 8 blocks away, and that again highlights the discrepancy or the burdens for people who need access to libraries. And then I just kind of pull like, well, the Peabody, at this point, I've learned that Peabody Metro and TriMet all have these equity, diversity, inclusivity, and resiliency goals. And I was just wondering if the connection with the libraries can be something that is also covered in the different agencies' goals. So I looked at other cities and other countries for ideas. Some of the ideas is actually in Beaverton last year, people were converting school buses into library bus and were distributing books to different neighborhoods and different houses. And looking into like, could we use something like the paratransit mode as a library shuttle where it picks up people and take them specifically to different library locations. Then I looked at other examples from other cities or states. This one is the Springfield Public Library. They provide bus passes to students and family members to get to the libraries and other places for free, but the source of the bus pass came from the library. For Iowa City Public Library, during the summer, they provide free transit to children through 12th grade and adult caregivers who are with them. All you have to do when you get on a bus is just show your library card to the bus driver. And then in Lansing, Michigan, it's kind of interesting because they have this program where you could go to the library and then check out bus passes from it. And it will, and you can keep the bus pass for 30 days until you have to renew it, which I thought was an interesting program. So just some assumptions. reduce a significant, by providing free transit to library card holders, the assumptions are that maybe, it would reduce a significant barrier for communities to get to any libraries. It would increase public transit ridership, expand library services and programs to underserved communities, address public transit and library equity, diversity, inclusion, and resiliency goals, and then maybe get Portland closer to be on the growing list of cities that provide free public transport. This next step from that project would be discussing with library and transit representatives and community organizers, actually engage with communities if this is even something that they're interested in getting into, and design a pilot program based on community input. That was all, and I think I was just really excited about this project and about the class that I decided to continue on my study into urban planning.
Thank you, Ada. Nice to have you back and share your project. Let's continue on with the course. And I think at this point, I'll get to the meat of the course and what you're here for. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, for the introductions and everything. So Ananda, let's try one more time and see if you can bring up, you're able to bring up the presentation at the very first time. So let's try that one more time. If not, then I'll screen share. And thank you for your patience, everyone. Okay, it looks like it's not. Let me take over. So I'll screen share. So if you unshare, what I'll do is I will screen share the PowerPoint, and I'm going to move between things. Can everyone see what I have?
No. You just see the black screen.
Yeah, it's the same black screen we're seeing.
Oh, seriously?
Mhm.
Huh.
Oh, now I see it.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Okay, now
Maybe
you
it's
see.
just Google Slides that isn't working.
I don't know, but okay. Everybody can see this? Yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so we have, see, until 8:40. So I wanna go over the meat of the course itself. So what I've done usually every year is that I change up my class and I change up the guest speakers. And so essentially what you're gonna be in for the next 8 weeks is to hear from folks around the city who've been working on projects at different agencies, perhaps some consulting firms, and perhaps some graduate students and some nonprofits. But week 1 is this week. So we've gone through, almost done with tonight. Week 2, you'll get representation and from PBOT, another person from PBOT, and Metro to talk about planning and policy at the regional and local levels. And week 3, we will continue that conversation, but with TriMet. So I've broken up the two the agencies to talk about some of the regional transit planning and efforts within the city, within the region for TriMet, and also talk about some equitable contracting. So this is kind of a new theme that I brought to the course. And one of the things that have been pretty instrumental over the years is how do we become more involved with the community? How do you bring folks who are small businesses to be involved with projects within the city or within the region? And so that will be another added topic, a new one for this year. Week 4, we will be talking about freight, and we have our representatives also from PBOT to talk about how we share the road with freight, and they're really excited to share their master plan, the freight master plan that's going to be rolling out. So that will be week 4. Week 5, I have a dedicated week to talk about community engagement and advocacy. So we will have Sarah, our runner who had run for office last year. She's leading the Street Trust, so she'll come back and speak about this advocacy from the Street Trust perspective. And also another person who's very instrumental in our community. So you'll be a good course. They all are really different. So week 6, kind of a new one as well from my previous course. I've named this week as Human Connections Through Storytelling and Design. So this week is actually kind of a big one as well, is that this is midterms week. So as I talk about your projects later on, and as we go through the syllabus, you'll learn more about the expectations for the project. But week 6 is when you will showcase part of what you've done already. And I will also have presentations coming from somebody that I know who works in transportation planning at the city of Seattle. So we'll get a different perspective from what Seattle's doing, what you could do here in Portland. Week 7 is, I named this Active Transportation and Community Resilience. So this week is actually Veterans Day week. And for the month of October, for the end of this year, I have all these weeks and months like kind of memorized in my head. But we will not hold class this week, this Thursday, and it's on your syllabus. And what I'm planning for this week is going to be the first time ever during our pandemic, and I hope across my fingers that it'll work out, is that we'll do a field trip with one of my colleagues from Oregon Walks, the executive director of Oregon Walks, Ashton Simpson, will plan on leading our walk along 82nd Avenue. So fingers crossed that it works out. I'm hoping it does. We did not do a meetup last year, mainly because we're in the middle of COVID. So I'm hoping that this will happen. In week 8, we are bringing in a representative from the Albina Vision Trust, Winta Johannes, who is the executive director of the Albina Vision Trust. And so she's going to talk about their plan and their vision. And so I've named this week Visions for the Future, Honoring the Past, and mainly the projects that she's working on within the Rose Garden and the Rose Quarter area with the Albina Vision. It's really just honoring what has been there in the past and having the vision for the future. So that's essentially the high level agenda for this course. There's week 9, I didn't put it in here, but week 9 is Thanksgiving, so we will break that week. And the last 2 weeks of November, and I think November 2nd and November 9th, those are dedicated for your presentations. So I've broken it out so that we could have 2 dedicated weeks for your project presentation as you come back and share the project that you've worked on. And during that period in time, then I invite folks from our guest speakers to come and serve as graders for you and to listen to your projects. And usually, like our directors have said in the past, it's always kind of rewarding for them to return back and see the fruit of the labor of this course within the 10-week time frame. And one of the cool things is each class, each year, it's really amazing to see what had come about with everybody in their courses and in their projects. So that's essentially the high level agenda for this course. And I can't see the chat very well, but if you have any questions, if Ananda and Michael, if you can prompt me, that would be great. So this is what I put together for Zoom functions and such. We already know, everybody knows about chat. I mean, we've been living through this pandemic for a while, so I'm going to skip this as we save time for other things. But chat box, raise hand function. I'd love to have your videos on if you can. I know it is late, but yeah, so this is essentially the class for kind of housekeeping piece. we did the introductions. And okay, so this is essentially going further into the syllabus, which I emailed out this afternoon. So the structure of the class is essentially to do presentations, the first half, and then I will do a break like I usually do, 8 to 10 minutes break so that we can stretch and take a breather. And then we'll come back, and there's always some sort of a class exercise that I like to do. We'll engage as much as possible with all the students, talk about homework and projects, and I think, let me see here, scavenger hunt was a part of that. So I'll talk a little bit more about the scavenger hunt. So the class, as you look, the syllabus is broken into 3 different phases. The first phase is essentially the history of our transportation system, which you'll learn at the end of this today, is that I actually loaded kind of some heavy homework reading at the beginning and some research of that we've done over the past on our history. So I'd like to, it'll be kind of our homework assignment as we move forward in phase 1. Later on, as we prep for the projects, the homework assignment will be essentially the development of your project. Phase 2, some of the guest speakers will mainly talk about our current transportation system. And then phase 3 is essentially looking at planning for our future systems. So the main themes that I really want us to focus on throughout this course that essentially would be woven into all the things that we've been doing is really, number 1 is to make sure that our system and how we plan is, is this equitable? Include diversity and inclusion. The second one is the livability of our planning and affordability of certain of our livelihood. It's very important. Number 3, the third theme is community engagement, bringing that to the forefront of our work and how we see things. 4th is sustainability and resiliency. I do quite a bit of work within the resiliency space. Over the next few weeks, you'll learn more about my projects. I'll showcase a couple of them, and you'll learn more about some of the work that I do in our resiliency planning, and also doing what we can to integrate into your projects. As Ada had said, we talked about community and building resilience for everyone. And then the 5th one is really looking at smart cities and kind of innovation and technology and how we plan for a future, but also recognizing what we have for ourselves within our context of our cities and the context of the urban planning and how transportation. One of the things we also look at is there's so many people interested in urban planning as well as housing, economic development, supply chain, all of that essentially will be woven into most of our conversations in our talks. So, and there we are. I've just essentially kind of mentioned quite a bit of this: sustainability, climate change, community, interdisciplinary. These are just really words, but really words that we want to harness in this course. Integration, cultural landscape and diversity, commitment to ethics, and social justice and equity. Twice. Okay. So every week as we move forward into this course, I think one of the things when our director Warner had talked about is PBOT has 2 questions. First is justice, transportation justice, and the other one is climate change. For us, one of the 3 questions that I think would be very imperative as you enter into each course is first to look at the three components of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And the first question would be, how can we equitably distribute resources so that everyone has what they need, recognizing historical and present disparities. You look at this within transportation and land use. So much of the transportation land use builds upon each other, and then housing builds upon that, and transit builds upon that. So making sure that everything's distributed equitably across is really important. Diversity, who is affected by our decisions, and especially who might be disproportionately harmed by our solutions. Good things, a question to think about. Inclusion, how can we include disproportionately harmed people into our process early and often as possible? So these are our, I want to call these our guiding principles, our guiding questions through each week. So the class project, and I am all of a sudden blurry. Hold on. This is what happens when you move. Okay, I'm good again. Okay, so in your syllabus, you will see there is a one-pager that talks about the class project. And one of the most famous things that came out of this class over the years was a lot of people approach this class, come in with some sort of a passion project over the years that they really want to work on and see through, and some perhaps even take to council to see if it could be implemented. And as some of our speakers have mentioned earlier, some of these projects have gotten implemented over the years, and it's always something really amazing. So I will help guide you through these class projects, and starting in about week 1 and week 2, all of your homework assignments will be guiding you to develop your class project. So essentially, I broke this out into 3 different phases. The first phase is the preliminary phase of the exploration and planning. Then we get this interim phase of research and documentation. And then the final phase would be design and implementation. So this is essentially a course. It's a college credit course. We also have a high schooler tuning in, but I think this is going to be prep for everybody. And we have folks who have been away from college or away from the work, away from the education world for a long time. But I think this will just get you back into the groove of learning again. So within this first piece, in the preliminary project exploration planning phase, we'll look at existing conditions. I'll have you define what your transportation problem is, and also within that, help identify some solutions to your problem. And I'll ask of you to prepare a map or some sort of physical presentation of your project. In the interim phase of development, we'll have you develop and do some visioning work with this, and then report your issues and findings, and also select a preferred solution. So within this phase, what you're going to do is actually go out into the world in transportation, your PBOT connections or your metro connections or TriMet, those that I have brought into the class, and then do your research and do a kind of an interview of folks who are already working, and then find out ways in which you can develop your project and how you would develop the solutions to those projects. And then ultimately, that will be a midpoint in which we will be at midterm. And one of the weeks, I forget which one it is already, but it's a week where I talk about the storytelling piece. That week will be a good one in which we could, I'll give you the platform again to share your project with the students, with everyone else, kind of a midpoint check-in. And then the final presentation will be accumulation of your project. And the last 2 weeks of course, which is the first 2 Thursdays of December, will be dedicated for you to present your project to the class. And that's when I'll have our directors return, our guest speakers return, and we'll have kind of an evaluation. And what we've always done in the past is essentially dedicate 3 minutes per presentation so that you can present your case. And the reason why it's such a short time frame is because when you have an opportunity to speak at council, you really just get 3 minutes to get your message across. So those 3 minutes have been expanded to 5. I think we could do 5, but I really want to, top it as best we can so that everybody has an opportunity, and then there's breaks and such. But the first year I taught this, we really it was really tight. So that's why I want to break it up into two weeks so everybody have an opportunity to share. So I know I'm going really fast. I can't see anybody's hands or questions because I'm screen sharing right now, but as we get into the course, I know there's going to be a lot of questions. I would ask of you to, in the syllabus, we have asked you to turn in your class project name and themes, and to me and Ananda. So that's a class project. And then the scavenger hunt game. I will talk a little bit more about this. This is not the right slide to share the scavenger hunt bingo game, but essentially I created this last year because we were not able to do the field trip. And the reason being is because the field trip was the field trip was, because of COVID, we weren't able to do a field trip. So we'll talk more about the scavenger hunt, but I'm gonna need to bring up the scavenger hunt game. So, and it's essentially, we're at 3:38. So infrastructure, what does it mean to you? Some quick things. Here's some things about the course itself and what we're doing to retool the course. We've got some recommended readings that came through the syllabus. And okay, so your homework assignment. So I've created a few assignments for this week that I'd like you to do. And the first week, this is what we've done in the past. And it's really amazing to look at where we are in the world and how we see each other, and how, and with respect to ourselves. So I'd like for you to do this exercise and turn it into our class, into your class folder. So submit it to the Google Drive. So previously, before class started, I think yesterday, all of you had received a Google Drive invitation from Ananda that shows your class folder. And I'd like for you to do this homework as homework 1. And I can show you some examples of what it looks like, but really one of the things that I like to do is for you to share where you are. And last year's privilege wheel looked like this. So I essentially will share with you the class where each of us are in our world, in our life, essentially, and how we are coming together in a very kind of a diverse network of folks. So this is kind of a subset of a homework assignment that I would like for you to turn in by next week before class. In addition, one of the things that we want to do is to share with you some of the history of Oregon. And in this homework assignment is for you to listen and to watch some of the impacts of our tribal communities and our history of Portland. And this homework assignment is essentially due along the same time as a privilege wheel, but I'd like for you to record some of your reactions to the videos. I don't have a week in which we dedicate to the history of Portland, so I'd like for you to spend some time kind of just to watch this, and then write and respond to how are these videos different? How does one capture the perspective of the others? And that's essentially it on what I have, but I know there's many other questions that you may have. The Google Drive that you all received would be where you will essentially submit your homework assignments under your name. Okay,
Yeah, I just had a quick announcement about that. So there were a couple of people who had submitted email addresses that were not connected to Google accounts. And so for those few people, I did reach out to you. And if you just send me an alternative account, then I can get those drives sent over to you.
Okay, great, thank you. What else do we have? I know we're at time already. You know, I think let's talk about the scavenger hunt game next week. I think we're gonna fine tune some things. So you all have received your own Google Drive, and I want to make sure that you all have access to the Google Drive that has the syllabus, the homework assignments, and the guest presentations. If you have all of those, then you're able to see, if you look at essentially week 1, let me screen share this so that everyone has it. Okay. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Can everyone see this? Yes. Okay. Yes. So this is a main page for everybody. It shows number 1, the syllabus. Number 2 is your homework class assignments. And this is where you'll see where they are in week 1, in all the weeks. So week 1, I have labeled actually 3 of them that I want you to kind of take a look at, go through it. And then what you'll do is when you, the first one is a privilege wheel. The second one is the history recordings. And this one, homework number 2, is essentially in preparation for our talk. So this is recommended. I know you all have other things going on, but I'd like for you to read this because we'll have Peabody and Metro, and then you'll be prepared to listen to them. So that's essentially what we have. As we close the course, let's see. The class projects is in here. So I'll let you peruse through here, and then you can take a look at this, and we'll talk more about this next week. And then we'll go from there. So I know we're at time, so I don't want to take any more of your time, but I want to just express my gratitude for having you all here tonight. And I think we will have a really great time together. I'll be here if you guys have any other questions, but I want to be respectful of your time to give you back your evening. With the videos, we need to